The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The Bills are going through their OTAs. I feel like I'm participating in my own OTA here.
This off-season proposal by the union. Scotty Scheffler.
Mike Danger.
This is a full-blown relapse. Before our very eyes, Gene Battaglia has become a misfit once again.
Gene Battaglia.
Where's Mr. Mouth Fates? Where's Mr. Mouth Catalana?
Let's go, Mets. Go Braves.
Intervention. I'm calling for an intervention. Friends and family of Gene Battaglia, listen up. We can't have this. He was doing so well.
Angel Hernandez, you stink, and I don't like you. And the Wolves have done it. They have forced a Game 5.
Rest in peace, Bill Walton.
Ronnie James's college career is over. He is staying in the NBA draft.
I've done a better job.
Cheez-Its are indeed the worst.
Right on a shot, and he scores the overtime winner here in Game 4, and this series is tied.
Kirby's Courtyard. What goes on in Kirby's Courtyard?
Remember
Kirby's Courtyard.
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
It's that rare Wednesday that feels like a Monday here in the Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia. Welcome on in. Glad you're with us. You found Rochester Sports Leader at 95.7 FM and AM 950. Hear us where we sound our best. Feel free to download Odyssey app or on your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. And watch the Sports Bar on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester. We're even streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/TheFanRochester. I'm Mike Danger. That's Gene Battaglia.
See, the Mets sucking is not good for the show. See, and I knew this would happen. They are dead, fire everyone, and that's it. And we move on.
Gene and I didn't have a lot of interaction during our time off here during the long holiday weekend, but one engagement that I did notice involved a third party, a regular on the show, somebody who frequents the show and somebody who didn't have to come right out and send you a text message about the Mets, but Mike Catalana did feel like he needed to text you about the Mets, and that was your response. Your response, that you're consistent at least. Your response to him is the same as your response now. Fire everybody.
That was it. And, hey, Mike and anybody else, that's where I was down. I was down in the Philly area last Friday for a quick down and back, and everywhere you look, it's Phillies this, Phillies that. Like, look, fun for your fan base. It's also still May.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a portion of the fan base that might be delusional, like there is with any fan base, but I think the majority of Philly fan recognizes that what they're doing isn't sustainable. Like there's going to be a dip at some point. Something's going to happen, and all of what's happening now doesn't mean anything unless you win it all. You got to win it all.
Yeah, well, they should be in the party just by the division. And Washington is certainly better than we anticipated. Miami's bad. The Mets are bad. And I'm not here to pile on the Braves, but honestly, I thought this would take the arc. And it still may. Like, it was a couple years ago that the Atlanta Braves were actually a losing team at the All-Star break, and they won the World Series. Well, the funny thing about that year was, well, that was the other time Ronald Acuna tore his ACL. So, I mean, I've heard some Braves fans say, well, this is just what this Braves team seems like they've got their issues too. Strider going down, Acuna going down. So, look, it should be the Phillies in that division. How was your weekend, buddy?
Man, it was a good weekend. Really restful, relaxing. Got to spend some time with family, which I always enjoy, as I hope many of you had the chance to do as well. And then it was also productive, hectic around the house. A lot of yard work, a lot of mulching. Got to get some mulching done. I think we did over 25 bags of mulch. I think we dumped out.
Oh, this is like the old argument because I'm yard. I like the delivery, and it's a big old mess in your driveway, but listen, bring it to me. I don't need to like be lugging bags around. So
I attach the trailer to my lawnmower, and then I just pile the trailer up with the bags of mulch, bring it back to where I need to dump the mulch, and then I dump the mulch that way. And I bought it earlier in the season because there was a sale on it, and it's just been sitting in my driveway. We haven't had good weather. Let's face it. I mean, it's been rainy. Spring has been just rainy and wet, and there hasn't been a lot of nice days. And even this weekend, you were kind of battling rain showers and checking the sky, making sure that and it did. It opened up on us as we were doing the mulch the other day. And I'm like, God, I just want to be able to get this off the ledger. I just want to check it off the ledger and move on to the next thing. Also, sir, is there a more manly feeling than when you dig up or cut down a tree or a large bush in your yard? Have you done it?
Of course, yeah.
Nothing better.
Yeah.
Like, it sucks when you're doing it. Like, we had this large overgrown bush, and it's grown pretty close to the house, and we want to redo some stuff in our backyard. And so I got out the chainsaw, and I cut it down, big mound of just shrub, and then, we're left with this stump, and I'm looking at it, I'm like, I'm going to attack that thing. We're going to get that thing out of the ground.
Yeah.
And we did. We got it out of the ground, so I was pretty excited about that. And aside from that, some relaxation, time with family, as I mentioned, floating around in a pool on a day which probably wasn't warm enough to be floating around in the pool, but it felt nice anyways. It felt nice. Felt like we were back.
Yeah, this is the month we feel like it's going to be summer because, we're conditioned 4th of July, and then once camp hits, hey, camp is here. So, look, Danger and I are going to take our time off before camp hits.
For sure.
That's kind of, so my apologies, was not here yesterday. Had to, I was asked, I'm happy to do it. The Section 5 lacrosse championships were last night.
Victor,
and can you believe this? It's true. That was the first lacrosse championship for McQuaid.
Huh.
Like, really? Yeah, that was actually true. So McQuaid defeated Penfield, and Victor took out Irondequoit.
Like it. And today, it does kind of feel like fall. So, I mean, we have football on the brain because you're walking around and it's scratching 70 degrees. It feels like shorts and hoodie weather.
Felt like that last night. Did you go outside last night?
I was out in the garage last night. Yeah.
A
little chilly. Watched the Rangers and the Panthers last night in the screened-in garage. Love that. But, yeah, it definitely has there's a briskness to the air. I had friends visiting from out of town, some business friends from one's down south in Atlanta, the other one's in Manhattan, and they're both in town. They're like, what do you call this weather? And I said, you call it fall. It feels like fall. They're like, oh, we like it. It's not muggy. It's not humid. I'm like, yeah, it's fall. I'm wearing a T-shirt, and I kind of wish I was wearing a jacket or a sweatshirt. But, obviously summer is here. The unofficial start to summer is here. And you mentioned it, Gino. I mean, we're going to be sporadic here through the course of the month of June. And certainly that week of 4th of July, we know you're going to be at the beach. But don't worry. When training camp gets here, you've got us.
That's it.
Fully committed. We will be ready for that. We've got OTAs to get to later this afternoon. We'll talk to our buddy Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard. Normally would join us on a Tuesday. Nice of him to shift his schedule and join us on a Wednesday to talk about this week's sessions. Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard stopping by here in less than 20 minutes. And this is great. Bill Ryder, the host of Ryder Than You on the Infinity Sports Network. You can hear him every day, right after Maggie and Perloff at 10 here on The Fan. He'll be stopping by just after 4 o'clock.
Yeah, and we'll talk about what we kind of expect, right? A Celtics, Mavs kind of NBA Finals coming up. But is that the more interesting story, Danger, or the puppet master that is LeBron James, who is just willing his son to be drafted, not only to be drafted, but where he should be drafted. And, what are the ramifications of that? We'll talk about that and more with Bill Ryder, who you hear on our station, part of the Infinity Sports Network. That is coming up in the 4 o'clock hour.
You can pull up a stool and join us anytime this afternoon. Just give us a shout at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326. You can also reach out to us on Elon's Twitter. That's X. As one of our regulars, Alex Brasky of the Batavia Daily News did earlier today, he forwarded along a little footnote to the story that we spent a lot of time talking about last week. Did you see that Rory had private investigators serve his wife Erica with divorce papers? Couldn't even do it himself. Coward. Coward. Face the music. Can't do it because you're a coward. Don't do that to Irondequoit royalty.
Yeah, and this story also kind of breaking today. Listen to this headline from the Golf Channel. Rory McIlroy wishes he didn't get so deeply involved in the Tour/Live split.
He's going to defect. She's going to take him for everything, and he's going to have to sign with Live just to make ends.
No, Live, don't take him. Do not take him.
Yeah.
Like, you need to set the precedent. Nope, sorry, you're going to be on the outside looking in.
We were talking a little bit about training camp and about, what football season is going to look like this year, knowing that today feels like fall. It feels like hitting weather out there. Interesting little proposal being put together here by the NFLPA, Gino. Did you see this?
Yeah, this is I saw this, and I think it's a perfect sports radio topic because do we really believe this? Now, here are the things we believe, right? We believe that at some point, the NFL is going to have 18 games, regular season games, go down to 2 preseason. Maybe we have to wait for the next CBA. That's more likely. Is that kind of something we kind of hold as something being true?
18, I say they're going to get to 20. I mean, I think 18 is nice, but the goal is to get to 20. The goal is going to be to get to as many games as they can get without the players dying on the field. So I think 18, yeah, that's certainly within reach.
Yeah, and look, this was supposedly a finger quote NFLPA proposal, and this comes from NFL Network's Tom Pelissero, which, all right, is Tom Pelissero being kind of nudged by the owners on this side, but the NFLPA, but this really isn't coming from the NFLPA, it's coming from the NFL. But according to the NFLPA is interested in eliminating the spring workouts. What we have right now, OTAs and the mandatory minicamp. And in case you're curious, the mandatory minicamp for the Buffalo Bills will be coming up June 11th through the 13th. This in exchange for what would be a longer training camp that could start perhaps at the end of June, which, I don't know. To me, it just seems like you're on a ship and you're moving around the deck chairs. Like you're really not getting more time. Or danger, hey, we know you're not going to give us more money, so can we just have that parking space or some flex time? I'm just skeptical of this report. I'm not the only one. There are players out there right now. They're like, no. Who is saying this?
Yeah, I don't know. The players' reaction that I've seen up to this point is not even lukewarm at best. I would say that they're not in favor of starting training camp early. I think there's a part of this, too, that the reason why this is even being brought up as a proposal is that the voluntary portions that are big, huge, exaggerated air quotes, voluntary portions are kind of not voluntary. Like, yeah, sure, players don't go to the voluntary portion. Some of them choose not to show up. It's a handful of Bills that didn't show up, right? Like for one reason or the other. But it's kind of frowned upon if you're not there at the voluntary portion. Let's look at Aaron Rodgers as an example. Let's say Aaron Rodgers wasn't at the voluntary portion of OTAs. That would be a story. So he kind of has to go, right? It isn't really voluntary.
It was a huge story with Tom Brady his last year in New England, which kind of tipped people off. Wait a second. Maybe Tom Brady's exiting. It turns out it was important for him to be at home with his issues going on. I find it hard to believe because what is happening right now, Danger, here's the thing about minicamp and OTAs and all that. You sleep in your own bed. You are going home. Some of these teams' training camp, we will have a great time when we're out at Fisher, and fans will have a great time, and the players will say all the right things, and Brandon Beane will tell you how much he loves camp. But not all of them do. Not all of them like coming to Rochester. I'll tell you that. And sure, yes, a lot of these camps now, everything is held in the team facility, but everything is kind of easy this time of year if you're a veteran. Why would you trade in easy weeks for training camp, which is kind of hard, actually?
Yeah. And then I wonder if the timeline of this, if them saying we want to expand it, open it up earlier, give a longer ramp up period to the regular season gels with them actually starting the regular season earlier, or adding that last week, that 18th game, so that the season ends, which is, we've always talked about it. You want it to end President's Weekend. Give us that extra day after the Super Bowl. Make it it's already practically a holiday. Why not align it with an actual holiday?
Yeah, like in the days where TV ratings meant it was the be-all and end-all. Does that even really matter anymore when you have these digital outfits, your Amazons and Netflix and everybody else going to bid on it? We're going to have the Super Bowl on one of those platforms in our lifetime. It will be a pay-per-view event. I had to change my opinion on that because you see the evidence and where it's going. So the idea that the February sweeps in television, sure, it still means a lot to the networks, but
the TV ratings are so dominated by the NFL. It really doesn't matter. Like they're number one by a mile. It's not even close.
Of the top 100 programs last year, 95 were NFL programs.
Right.
So what other thing dominates?
There
like
is
that?
nothing that, I mean, because of the world and how it's changed. I mean, the days of, rolling out a sitcom and hoping that it's going to pull a big number, reality TV, live TV events, and certainly the NFL and the drama that it provides have just dominated, have absolutely dominated. So I don't know that matters as much, but they can make more money when they have a larger suite of games to offer up. That 18th week means they can ask for more money from the networks. It means that they can get more people into their stadiums. They can charge more for tickets. They can do, it all.
Here's my read on this, Danger, and you tell me, because, again, this isn't the NFLPA. This is Tom Pelissaro reporting the NFLPA. Here's my read on this. We know the owners want the 18th game. We know there's a lot of money to be had, okay? Okay, we all nod our heads. Yes. Okay, what would be the first thing you would negotiate from that standpoint if you wanted that? You would reach out across the table and you wouldn't be offering any more money. You would be saying, hey, you know what? This is the time of year you really don't like. Imagine you're on the beach. You're home. You don't have to do anything in April and May or anything else like that. NFLPA, what do you think here? And again, they have a new head there, remember.
Morris Smith is out.
Yeah, so, okay, we'll get back to. Does that mean the NFLPA is really pushing this, or this is the NFL saying, hey, we'll kind of consider this? Because, again, if I'm a player, why would you accept something like this? Hey, you want 18 games? Great. Give us more jobs, expand the roster here to 60. Oh, and by the way, we would like a more percentage of the pie. That's where the negotiations begin and end.
One less preseason game. 2 preseason games.
It doesn't even matter.
Shorten the preseason. If you're gonna move things around and extend training camp. And by the way, there's something to be said about that as well. Is training camp as a league-wide event as maximized as the NFL would like it to be? We've seen them maximize the Super Bowl. We've seen them maximize the postseason. We've seen them maximize the draft.
Do they actually make money off of training? I'm asking honestly, and I'm guessing for in terms of us, the answer is no. I think when it all started and you saw the signage and you were, well, now it's not 2-a-days. Now you're selling, look at the merchandise tent. There really isn't the merchandise tent. You had this big old thing out there. I think what the Buffalo Bills make in terms of dollars, marketing, advertising, merchandise, I think it's very minimal out at St. John Fisher. So I see
sponsorship revenue. There's a lot of sponsorship revenue that comes from the training camp.
Well, and again, that could just be like a shell game. Hey, we're going to give this. It's part
of your sponsorship of the regular season. Sure.
But I will say this, because if you're like me and your phone, I can't open my damn phone without getting an ad from Visit Toronto or Visit here or Visit there. There are visitor and convention bureaus that have big pots of money. There are schools and universities, big pots of money that would love to invest in bringing in an NFL team just to kind of raise the flag. So from that standpoint, if there's somebody that will write a big old check to bring in a team for 5 years or whatever it is, and that's why I always thought the Buffalo Bills, hey, it's great they're here at Fisher, but let's be realistic here. If they wanted to expand their base, you're going north of the border. You're doing, and I always thought that was kind of the destination with the Bills in Toronto series, that you would have the Bills kind of moving this around. But credit Brandon Beane and Sean McDermott, because that was a Russ Brandon thing with marketing. It is literally about the football. That's why, hey, it's not a night practice, which is good for clients. It's first thing in the morning, okay? It's better for the team to get the work in the morning, and then for the fans, all right, if you're here in the morning, great. We don't need to cater as much to you in the night or the big sponsors or anything like that. So I hear what you're saying, Danger, but if the football people are actually involved, they're saying no to this too.
Right, coaches don't want any part of this.
No, the coaches want the kind of system they have right now because, hey, we keep tabs on you in April and May and June. Every team has a knucklehead. What if you gave players literally 6 months off here?
I might be wrong, but I think there was another Kansas City Chief that just got arrested too. I feel like there's every day you're not a day doesn't go by where you don't have a chief.
You brought up 4th of July earlier. That's what everybody holds their breath in the NFL.
Right. You've got too many cautionary tales out there. Nobody wants Jason Pierre-Paul on their team blowing up their hand well, with the firework on 4th of July, you worry about what these guys are doing when they have that spare time. The coaches, I have to imagine, are going to push back against it because, like anything, they're routine, they're regimented. They would have to completely revamp their entire off-season program. They would have to reschedule everything. They would have to come up with new systems, and it in a way kind of reshuffles the deck. It kind of makes it so that guys that have a system like a McDermott or like an Andy Reid, guys that are so regimented in their system, will have to kind of start from scratch, and you're on equal footing with the rookie coach who might have a better way of doing it now that everything is kind of rearranged. It'll be interesting to see. I don't know. I mean, it doesn't seem like there's a lot of support from what's being said about this proposal from some of the players, certainly from some of the coaches as well. But, if you follow the money on this, it feels like it might be the first volley in an attempt to try and get an additional game on that regular season schedule by the NFL.
All the charges were dropped for Scotty Scheffler today.
Saw that.
Yeah.
Saw that. When we saw the footage that we saw, it felt like it was a little embarrassing. It felt like it could have been just what it was, which was a giant miscommunication. Not like Scotty Scheffler going. I mean, there's a little bit of the arrogance of, I'm a professional golfer, I need to be here at this time. I don't want to.
Just a tiny bit of, do you know who I am?
There's some of that going on there, right? There's some of that going on there, even though he didn't say that, he didn't do that. But it felt like it was always all along just a big, giant miscommunication, and like not having the body cam footage, not really knowing what went down. Like, where are we going with
There's
this?
also a business angle to this too. Like, hey, in Rochester, we really, really want one of these back, right? And we keep waiting, and no, I haven't heard anything about 2033. You know who else wouldn't want one back? Louisville would like one back.
Sure
and
would.
It would look really, really bad if you tried to press charges and get a conviction of the world's number one golfer. So I'm sure that somebody from the business community said, hey, stop.
Yeah. So there's another bit of news from today. Scotty Scheffler putting out a statement, and you forget that the whole reason why this was even a thing was that unfortunately somebody died, somebody passed away, and let's not forget the victim of this story. The true victim of the story isn't Scotty Scheffler; it's the family, the person who passed away early that morning at the PGA Championship. So let's get to Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard covering the Buffalo Bills. We'll get the latest from Orchard Park next. You can join us at 585-866-4326.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Bills OTAs continuing today, and of course, one of the battles, perhaps the battle, we'll all be looking at. Wide receiver Dalton Kincaid, the tight end, offering his opinion.
You know, just a lot of selfless guys. Obviously, that room looks a lot different from last year, and I feel like that transition has gone really well in terms of, you know, those guys blending in and meshing good with the group of guys we have here and the culture.
Matt Perino, Syracuse Post-Standard, and the Shout Podcast. We'll be talking some Buffalo Bills football coming up next with Matt. Rochester Red Wings tonight continuing their series against St. Paul. On the Major League scoreboard, one final. Game one of a doubleheader sees the Tigers over the Pirates 8-0. Top of 8, St. Louis leading at Cincinnati 3-1. Texas up on Arizona 1-0. Mets and Dodgers coming up at 4 o'clock. Chargers against Scotty Scheffler dropped. Gene Battaglia, the Fan Rochester.
Pull up a stool and join us. 585-866-4FAN. 866-432-6. The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia on the Sports Leader. 95.7 FM and AM 950, The Fan, Rochester.
Look, at the end of the day, this is Josh Allen's offense, right? Like you're gonna put together the offense around the guys that you got. So for us to just say, hey, we're just gonna scrap everything and everything was broken, that wasn't the case, right? And so there'll be some elements of things that I believe in, but it's more of like, tell me who we have on our football team and the guys and what they can do well, and we're gonna do that.
Bills offensive coordinator Joe Brady. OTAs continue in Orchard Park to talk about the Buffalo Bills. We bring in Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard and the Shout Podcast. And it sounded like a steady drum beat, Matt, from Joe Brady and others, that we're going to work to find the strengths of who we have and exploit those strengths throughout the course of the season. How are you, bud?
I am good, and you're right. I mean, he was asked multiple different times, multiple different ways for a little insight into what this thing's going to look like, and he's kept it as vanilla as possible, and that's by design, right? Like, I don't think that they want to show any bit of their hand if they don't have to, and what this potentially is going to look like. I thought, listening to Brandon Beane on the Athletic Football Show, I thought that was it was pretty insightful because you look at this group and what they want to be, and he kind of talked about Curtis Samuel being able to play on the outside and Khalil Shakir even being able to play on the outside. So I'm very interested to see what this thing looks like, and don't worry about anything because they keep mentioning Dalton Kincaid as well.
Yeah, I think Dalton Kincaid, and putting Dalton Kincaid out there yesterday, he's going to become a voice and a leader in this team. I think another thing I'm also curious, because we're going to talk about Josh Allen, certainly the wide receivers, but the idea that the Bills are going to focus on the running game maybe a little bit more, maybe they pick up where they left off, but what are your thoughts on Ray Davis? Because, again, everybody looks great this time of year, but Ray Davis, can he be that rookie who may be a little bit ahead of the curve here, Matt?
I mean, yeah, because I think that they drafted him with the idea in mind that he is going to be that 1B to James Cook. When you look at their skill sets, they're very similar. And actually, as I was kind of diving into his scouting report after they drafted him, my initial thought was this is like a complimentary back. Well, actually, I think it's more of like the Mitchell Trubisky kind of idea behind Josh Allen. Get a guy maybe doesn't have the high-end potential, but does a lot of the same things. And I don't want to put Ray Davis in that kind of box. Maybe he does have running back one potential, and we'll see it over the course of this season and next season. But I think when Cook comes off the field and Davis goes onto the field, they're not losing anything in terms of what the player can do. I'm sure you've seen some of the video that has come out. When he runs these routes versus air, you can see the explosiveness, the fluidity to his route running, and he doesn't drop the ball. And, watching him and Frank Gore Jr. catch passes back-to-back, it's a stark contrast because Gore Jr.'s had a couple of drops throughout the first couple of weeks of OTAs. So far, Ray Davis, hands-wise, you haven't seen any problems.
Matt, I'm curious about a guy who has potential to be a forgotten first-rounder for the Buffalo Bills. What have we heard or seen out of Kaiir Elam so far this offseason?
I mean, you've seen a guy that continues to show the toughness that's been formed because of what's happened to him, right? Like, this has been a guy that has had to take it on the chin over and over again, the disappointment of being this first-round draft pick that has just not lived up to the expectations, and he said he's kind of embraced that. And we got a chance to talk to him Tuesday after practice, and you could see just how it feels like a fresh start for him in a lot of ways. I mean, we've talked about maybe him not getting along with John Butler and there being a little bit of a divide in that room, and it feels them out in the practice field. Jamil Adai is almost like connected to Elam, and he talked about him pouring into him every single day. Like, when it doesn't go right, he wants to know about it, and he wants to rep this thing over and over again, so when they get into the game, he can kind of take some success from the practice field and bring it into the game, which I don't think has always been the case for him. I think the practice week has been where it hasn't gone as well, and he's kind of had to rely on his skills. Now, when you watch him out at practice, he's as good as it gets when it comes to like one-on-one coverage cornerback, and that's happened ever since he was the first day in Orchard Park. Like, he is really fast. He blanketed Keon Coleman on a couple of routes in 7-on-7 yesterday, and you see that, and you're like, oh yeah, this is why he was a first-round draft pick. This is why the Bills were super excited about getting him. And so I think he's in a spot where there's a lot of opportunity. I think the lack of movement at that position, like not going out and getting a bona fide veteran that you can kind of put in that room and be a backup behind Benford and Rasul Douglas, tells you what they still think of Kyer Elam. And he spent this offseason, or at least part of it, working tirelessly with Taron Johnson. And guys, think about this. Is there a better example of a guy who comes in the league, has a little bit of success, like Taron Johnson did? Do you remember he got benched in his second year for Cam Lewis? And remember, a couple quarters into that game, Cam Lewis got injured, which forced Taron Johnson back onto the field, and he never lost that job again. There's no better example of a guy that where it didn't go right early on, and he had to kind of figure out a way to bounce back, and he's sharing all that insight with Kyer Elam. They've trained together away from Buffalo this offseason, and Elam mentioned him a couple of times throughout the interview yesterday.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the corners, and certainly, Christian Benford, I think, has been certainly solid for the Buffalo Bills. I don't think any reason to think that his play will slip off. Rasul Douglas bringing a different skill set. He was great last year, but Matt, the idea that Kyer Elam may be the number 3, and then what is actually behind, Kyer Elam? I mean, is there cause for concern about the depth at the corner position, or are some of these guys we're just not familiar with that all of a sudden become the darlings when you get to Fisher here?
Yeah, I mean, I still think they'll probably go out and get somebody as we get close. That late July edition right before the start of training camp, just bringing somebody, a veteran that can come in here and compete and push Elam, push Jamarcus Ingram, who I feel like they really like. And I think that they're confident in him. Like, remember, he's been a guy that's played some snaps for them the last couple of years in pretty big spots when guys have been banged up. They've asked a UDFA guy to go in there and play. So I think that he's kind of fallen into that Cam Lewis role as like the number 4 guy on the boundary room, that if he needs to play, they're confident in him. They really like this guy. I think I talked to you guys about him after rookie minicamp. Kanai Lovely. I'm going to be watching him very closely. Super speedy guy. He plays on the boundary as well, a little bit different than Daquan Hardy, who's going to be primarily slot cornerback. And so they have some young talent there. They're going to probably have to see what it looks like once they get out on the practice field at Fisher. But I don't think they're in a rush to add to the room. And I think that you also run into the problem that depending on the stature of the guy that you bring in that position, you're going to have to give him valuable reps, right? Like, if you're going to bring in a 7-8 year veteran, you could probably bring him in the middle of August, get him up to speed if you don't like what you see. But there's no rush because you want to get the reps to these younger guys and see what it looks like. So I don't think that there's necessarily a timeline for it, but I wouldn't be surprised, depending on how things go at Fisher early on, if they add. Or equally, I wouldn't be as surprised if they don't add because they like what they have in the young guys.
Matt, I'm glad you brought up the Brandon Beane interview on The Athletic. We isolated this clip, Brandon Beane talking about the team's actions after drafting Josh Allen.
You dumbass, I said to myself, drafting a rookie quarterback. I didn't have someone here with the right experience, veteran, for Josh to lean on. Early on, Josh kind of struggling a little bit, going through his thing, and I realized it, and it was stupid of me to not have done it, but I got Derek Anderson in here around week 5 or 6. But really, we put all our assets into Josh Allen. I got too cute.
Now, it's funny that this is coming out now. It's almost like you can do a victory lap because Josh Allen hit, you have your franchise quarterback, and if you're Brandon Beane, you can throw out a little self-deprecation and say that you didn't know what you were doing. Did not having, like in hindsight now, you look at it, is Beane just being a little self-deprecating here? Is there anything to him not putting a backup or a veteran around his rookie quarterback after he drafted Josh Allen?
I wonder, he's never going to say this, but I wonder how much they thought that McCarron was going to be that, and he just wasn't. Like, he was a guy that was still coming in. He was a couple years into the league, maybe still clinging onto the hopes of one more chance, and then they get into it, and he's competing for the job, and when he lost it to Nathan Peterman, I wonder, remember that last preseason game when the Bills were down a bunch? I think it was to the Bears.
Yeah,
Bears, yes.
Yeah, I remember it.
And McCarron leads this crazy fourth quarter comeback, and he's talking in his locker room after. That was the funniest thing that I've experienced. He was talking like he just won the Rose Bowl.
Yeah.
It was unbelievable for a veteran guy. So I think they got him into the building, learned a little bit about him, and realized maybe they were hoping he was going to be that guy, especially for a guy that played at a big time college and has a lot of big game experience. They could show him the ropes, and that wasn't him. I don't think Derek Anderson was some unbelievable great veteran that you bring in and show a guy the ropes. He's had his own little bit of a rocky road in the NFL, but I do think with experience comes insight. He was very familiar with Brian Dable, which Brandon Beane mentioned on the podcast, which I think was even more important than maybe his experience, because translating in the quarterback room what Brian Dable wanted maybe expedited the process for Allen in Dable's offense, which maybe that part of it, and the best person to ask that question would be Dable himself, but that part of it I think maybe was the most interesting from his answer.
Yeah, I'll just ask this question. So for any team that, invests heavily, a number 1 overall pick, and there isn't a veteran quarterback in the room, would you kind of question that? Chicago, Matt?
Well, when you're Caleb Williams, there's no excuses though. He comes ready made. He's got all the moxie. He's got all of the posturing and the confidence. He's not lacking for confidence, right? Watch some of this dude's interviews. It's supposed to be ready made when you take a guy like this. He reminds me of a Peyton Manning or a Trevor Lawrence or a Kyler Murray or a Baker Mayfield. And I know it didn't work out for all of those guys, or maybe hasn't to this point, but I still think that they think Caleb Williams coming in here year 1, not many rookie quarterbacks, are going to walk into a situation like this and have the kind of talent at the receiver position that he has coming in year 1. So I get your point, and it's going to be interesting to see how he handles. People forget, Chicago's not it's a huge city. It's not like the media market that I feel like a New York is, but it still is a big-time media market compared to some of the other ones that you can kind of land in. So I'm interested to see how he handles all of it.
Gene's just needling me on that one, Matt. Thank you for humoring him on that.
I like to humor Gino from time to time. He asks great questions.
Matt, the other part of the interview that Beane did with The Athletic that I thought was interesting was his explanation as to why they decided now was the time to move on from Steph Diggs. Now, I have a whole different set of theories that I can't go into, or I don't have proof that this is what happened, but I don't know that I necessarily buy what Brandon Beane is selling when he lays out his reasoning for trading Stephon Diggs. What was your takeaway from that part of the interview?
I truly believe, and again, this isn't based on anything that I know, but just based off of the behavior when it happened, the fact that they are eating the $31 million. I don't know if this aligns with what you think, but I just think that for as much of a money reason as this was a personality clash in heading into year 5 with a guy who fell off a little bit. And I think it's easy to put up with a guy when he's catching, 125 balls for 1,500 yards, 8 touchdowns, and lifting up your young, developing quarterback. It's a whole different situation when he's causing off-the-field distractions. His brother is tweeting anti-Josh Allen rhetoric on X, and, he's on the sideline at the end of the game with his arms raised up, seemingly yelling at a guy, and we are a year and a half later and still don't know what that was truly all about. I think they just got tired of it, and they moved off of it. And sure, there's a money part of it, but, to run an organization, to have any kind of – he also mentioned in that interview, if you go back and listen, how important they take the process of vetting guys and women that are in their organization, that they become staff members, coaches, personnel, any kind of people that touch their players, because the messaging to those players, any type of disconnect could throw the whole thing off axis. What did the Stephon Diggs experience do to that whole environment over the last year and a half? So, yeah, I buy it to a degree. I definitely think the money was part of it, and the future cap and the health of the cap and figuring all that out. But I think you deal with the cap ramifications if you still think a guy can play, and it's not all of the problems that come with it.
We're talking to Matt Perino, Shout Podcast, Syracuse Post-Standard. And Matt, before you came on, we were talking about this Tom Pelissero report and debating, okay, what's the agenda really behind this? That it's the NFLPA supposedly proposing a shift in the offseason. Matt, are you buying into any of this, that we could be perhaps at some point doing away with OTAs and the mandatory minicamp in exchange for a longer training camp?
I mean, I just think that there's too many hurdles to climb for this to be something that is going to pass on the first the introductory pitch. I think coaches and general managers and front office people hate the idea. There's a regimented process, and there's so much that goes into the spring. It's not just about the walkthroughs and the practices and the workouts. It's like, Sean McDermott's putting together team bonding things. Like, guys are playing golf together. Guys are going to each other's houses. All of the team building that happens in football. And when you got 53 guys on a roster, I'd argue it's the most important team building process happens in football as compared to any other sport, because of how much the communication piece matters on both sides of the ball and understanding people and building that camaraderie. A lot of times, growing up as a sports fan, whenever I heard any of that stuff, I kind of was just all right, rolled my eyes, and I was just all right, I don't care, just go out there and play better than the guy on the other side. But the more I've seen behind the curtain and just how much goes into the planning process and everything that goes into a Sunday from a game planning perspective and understanding who you're playing with, what they like, what they don't like, how you could talk to them in the game, how you can't. There's so many little things when you have 11 people out on the field trying to accomplish the same goal. I think a lot of that starts in the spring. And if you take away that huge portion of it and only open up things 2 weeks earlier in the summer, you sacrifice that, because once you get to the summer, that's when everything really has had to have been installed for the most part, and you're really starting to now run through everything and practice it as opposed to learn it. They're still learning, of course. I mean, rookies are still probably learning halfway through their rookie seasons, but a lot of that has been implemented. You're starting to really form what your offense has been. I think that there's probably a concern that will delay a lot of the process. Now you're talking about, extending the regular season and potentially taking away a preseason game. It's there's a lot that goes into it. Is that I don't think this is something you rush into. I think this is going to have to be, discussed, and who knows if there's going to have to be a separate collective bargaining. I don't know really the details about all of that, but it's definitely something interesting to watch. And I know that there's players probably for it and probably players that are against it, especially those that get workout bonuses. But we'll track it. We'll see what happens.
Feels like it's a preventative move to me, Matt. And hear me out on this. We know that right now is a voluntary portion of the offseason program, yet if you're a player, let's use Stephon Diggs in Houston as an example, who doesn't show up for the voluntary portion, then it becomes a story, and the voluntary actually becomes involuntary. Yeah. No, we do expect you to be at the voluntary portion. So at some point, is a player going to blow the whistle and say, Yeah, it's voluntary, but they're going to judge you harshly and critically if you're not at the voluntary portion of the offseason program.
Well, yeah, I think that but I also think that it's like different based on the situation, isn't it? Like some people don't show up for voluntary workout and it's completely ignored or very mildly covered. I feel like a guy like Stephon Diggs, he's in a spot where he talks about the importance of practice. He talks about the importance of leadership. When he doesn't show up, especially this year, right? Like even last year, like I'm a beat reporter. I covered him not being at OTAs and basically covered it like it was no big deal. This is a veteran guy going into his 4th season in the same offense because Ken Dorsey was still installed as the offensive coordinator. We know not much changed from Dable to Dorsey. And so to me, it wasn't that big of news. Now it is because he's in a brand new spot with a quarterback that's going into his 2nd year. A lot is on the line. Getting on the same page from the jump, we've seen how important that is for teams, that if it takes you any kind of amount of time to gel, you might be already out of the race. And they have a lot of talent there, but sometimes just having a lot of talent isn't the answer. Like, you got to build the rapport. I mean, the first year of Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, they were out in Florida for like 4 days during COVID, working on everything, going over the playbook. Dable had kind of messaged them all the different things. They were FaceTiming every day. So there's a lot that goes into it. So I think it's like, sure, I'm sure players don't want that to answer those questions, but I also think, like, depending on when it happens, it's the different varying level of story.
Right, but it shouldn't be. I guess that's my point. If it's voluntary for all, then it should be voluntary for all. I'll use another example. Like, if Aaron Rodgers isn't at OTAs for the Jets, it's a distraction, it's a story, even though there's nothing saying that he has to be there for the New York Jets. It's a story if he's not.
Yeah, but there's also extenuating circumstances to that. Aaron Rodgers, it went to New York. That has been a losing team, and there's a lot of expectations in a huge media market. He signed a massive contract coming off of a pretty bad year. He didn't play football last year. So I think it's like, what is the message that it sends? If Patrick Mahomes doesn't show up for OTAs, is it a huge story? Probably not. The guy's won Super Bowls. And I know Aaron Rodgers has one like over a decade ago or whatever the timeline is. I just think it's different depending on who it is. And I think a lot of the story that you're talking about comes from who the player is and some of the experiences that they've had.
We were having this debate too, Matt, because the other angle is like longer training camp. Who actually wants that? I know players like training camp just get it done, but if there's money to be made, and to this point, I don't know how much money the Buffalo Bills actually make at St. John Fisher University. Back in the day, it was all about marketing and selling things, and now it just seems like to be football centric. But on the other hand, there's all these visitor and convention bureaus and all this money that could be out there. Could you see the NFL perhaps the pendulum swing in the other direction? That, hey, you know what, we're gonna take the show on the road here. Will more teams go in this direction?
Finish that last part. Gino, you broke up.
Oh, no problem there. Future training camp. Could you see the pendulum going the other way, knowing that maybe there's money to be made with all these convention and visitor bureaus and public dollars when it comes to tourism?
Potentially. I mean, I don't take anything off the table with what the NFL will change, especially around what they do to the regular season and the preseason and making things longer, shortening them, giving them the different. Look at the TV rights, right? Like the way those are ping-ponging around, the kind of dollars behind that. So if there's money to be made, it wouldn't surprise me if they do different things. I think it depends on the team. It depends on the city. But interesting, all the same.
Matt, what are you and Ryan working on this week for the Shout podcast? And what about your coverage at New York Upstate this week? Can we check out?
Yeah, we got a full podcast up from yesterday. We will come back with another one either tomorrow or Friday or maybe sometime over the weekend. We'll have you covered with everything OTAs for the next couple of weeks. And, our coverage is a little bit different. If you notice a little bit of a different deal on social media and maybe even on the website, we've really geared a lot of our coverage to our insider group that we've cultivated. Over 345 subscribers. They get all of the insights from the practice field, and this is the best time to join because, our training camp coverage is unlike anybody else's. And where you get it first is going to be on the Insider Text line. And obviously the podcast will always have you covered as well. We're moving in a much more like direct-to-consumer model. And it's been really, just for me, it's been really cool to interact with this kind of like hardcore group of fans. And I'm not going to forget about the larger audience. Don't get me wrong. That's always going to be a priority. But we're really focusing in on this and like what this could be and helping to gear our coverage and the conversations that I've had and some of the things that people want from it and the one-on-one communication aspect to it's been really cool.
Yeah, and Matt, how do people kind of sign up for that?
Yeah, sorry. I should include that part. 716-528-6727, or just go to joinsubtext.com/shoutbuffalobills. It's a 2-week free trial, and it is $3.99 a month after that. So for a year, you get access to me and Ryan for less than $50. It's not too bad.
I love it, bud. Thanks for making time for us. Great job covering OTAs. Look forward to talking to you again.
All right, buddy. Take care.
You got it. There he is, Matt Perino, covering the Buffalo Bills OTAs this week. And we got to hear earlier this week from Kyrie Elam. We got to hear from Joe Brady. Yeah, some stuff going on there.
Yeah, I think Matt's right on. Like, I expect a corner to be signed at some point. Doesn't seem like there's enough. Maybe a veteran. See what's left in the tank. We got some NBA talk coming up next.
Yeah, we're going to take a break and come back with the host of Writer Than You. You can hear him weekdays here on The Fan Rochester right after Maggie and Perloff at 10 a.m. Bill Ryder stops by the Sports Bar next.
You're listening to the Sports Bar with AM 950, The Fan Rochester.
WROC AM, WBEE HD2, and W239BF Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Bills OTAs continuing under the sun today in Orchard Park. One of the battles certainly we're looking at, wide receiver, the veteran of this group now, Khalil Shakir. He's going to do whatever it takes.
For me, it's just always been, if I got to go in there and block 50 times, go in there and block 50 times. If I got to go in there and run a route, run a go route and run off 50 times, I'm going to do it. I'm huge, and what goes around comes around.
No NBA action tonight. We do have Game 4, though. Dallas and Edmonton, Stars ahead 2 games to 1. Rochester Red Wings continuing their series tonight against St. Paul. On the Major League scoreboard, Game 1 of a doubleheader sees the Tigers over the Pirates 8-0. In Game 2, they're scoreless in the second. Bottom of 9, last chance here for the Reds. They're down to the Cardinals 5-2. Texas up in Arizona 4-0 in the 5th. Phillies with the early lead out in San Francisco 1-0. Yankees play out at Anaheim tonight. Gene Battaglia, the sports leader, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The Bills are going through their OTAs. I feel like I'm participating in my own OTA here.
This off-season proposal by the union.
Scotty Scheffler.
Mike Danger.
This is a full-blown relapse. Before our very eyes, Gene Battaglia has become a misfit once again.
Gene Battaglia.
Where's Mr. Mouth Fates? Where's Mr. Mouth Catalana?
Let's go Mets. Go Braves.
Intervention! I'm calling for an intervention. Friends and family of Gene Battaglia, listen up. We can't have this. He was doing so well.
Angel Hernandez, you stink, and I don't like you! And the Wolves have done it. They have forced a Game 5.
Rest in peace, Bill Walton.
Ronnie James's college career is over. He is staying in the NBA draft.
I've done a better job.
Cheez-Its are indeed the worst.
Right on a shot, and he scores! The overtime winner here in Game 4, and this series is tied!
Kirby's Courtyard. What goes on in Kirby's Courtyard?
Remember Kirby's Courtyard?
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan Rochester.
We welcome you back into the Sports Bar. Danger and Battaglia back after an extended long holiday weekend. Glad you're with us at 95.7 FM, AM 950, the free-to-download Odyssey app where we sound our best, as well as your smart device when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. You can catch our video stream on our YouTube channel at The Fan Rochester. We're streaming on Twitch at twitch.tv/The Fan Rochester. And if you missed last hour's conversation with Matt Perino covering the Buffalo Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard, also the Shout podcast, you can get that on demand wherever you pod. Just search out the Sports Bar, and you'll find all of our guest appearances listed for you right there. Happy hour coming up at 5 o'clock, and we're trying to get Bill Reiter, the host of Reiter Than You, on the blower as well. You can hear Bill here on the Fan Rochester every weekday right after Maggie and Perloff at 10 a.m. Is also the host of the Beyond the Arc podcast. I want to get a little NBA conversation going with Bill Reiter. He's also a notable Chicago Bears fan, and I just, for my own satisfaction, I want Bill to humor me and let me know if I have reason to feel optimistic after years of being downtrodden as a fan, given all the moves that have been made this offseason in Chicago. So as we try to get Reiter on with us here at some point this hour, Gino, we will have those conversations and more with him as well. We also have takes on tap here in the Sports Bar to get to some takes if we can't get Reiter on right away.
No, we do. He said, call me at the number listed below. Okay, I got it now.
All right. Gino is going to get – this is the byproduct of not having an actual producer in the Sports Bar. I wouldn't say that, Gino. You're a fine producer, and when I need to step into that role, we'd make good with what we can here in the Sports Bar as we continue to try and get Bill here on the phone. It sounds like we've got him now, so we stand by. The host of Reiter Than You on the Infinity Sports Network. You can hear him weekdays here on the Fan Rochester right after Maggie and Perloff, starting at 10 o'clock. Bill, glad to get you on with us here. So much to get to since the last time we've spoken. We want to get your thoughts on the Buffalo Bills because we know you've been outspoken in the past about their window, what that looks like. But let's start with the NBA. We know you're spending a lot of time talking about the NBA, talking about the postseason, and most recent memory would have Minnesota avoiding that sweep at the hands of Dallas. How much of a series do you think they can make it given the win last night?
Yeah, look, I'd like to, hey, by the way, great to be back on. I'd like to believe it could be a series, and I'd love to see the Timberwolves maybe at a minimum do what Boston did last year when they got down 3-0 and got it to a Game 7. I think it's going to be really hard to beat this Mavericks team even two more times in a row. I don't know that Kyrie Irving is going to have an off game again like he did last night. I don't think Luka was particularly impressive. He was good in the fourth quarter, but was pretty inefficient. But also this, that defense for Minnesota, which was the best in the NBA in the regular season, and up until this series, finally kind of clicked in the conference finals last night. If they can do that, if Cat can keep shooting well and maybe play more than 29 minutes, if Ant can bring back that swagger, maybe they can win a game at home, reverse the momentum, and do something historical.
Yeah, and so now you have Boston, and they don't play until Game 1, which will be June 6th. Bill, every Celtic fan I talk to, same thing. It's like they don't trust this team. More specifically, they don't trust the coach, but yet they are sweeping the Pacers out in the conference finals. So what do you make of Boston, whoever they play here in the final?
It's so funny because I don't think Boston fans trust them. I don't think local Boston media trust them, and I don't think the national media trust them. And I'm not sure how fair that is. And full disclosure, I don't feel an overwhelming amount of confidence about the Celtics either. There's some reasons for that. They are, as I'm sure you know, the third best net rating in NBA history. Right on paper, the only teams that have won by more points over the course of games are two of Jordan's Bulls teams. So on paper, these guys are ferocious. They have the best offense in the game. They have the third best defense. But you kind of get into the numbers when they play close games, which they don't play a lot of. They've lost them a lot of the times this year. Their net rating dropped to 22nd just this season. Tatum has been really bad in clutch situations for a lot of his career, and despite some performances this post, like the last few games or the last series, he hasn't been reliable. So it's a bad radio answer. I don't know. I don't think they've been challenged. I think they will be by Dallas or maybe Minnesota. I don't trust them either, but maybe they're so good they're just going to prove all of us wrong and beat the living you-know-what out of whoever they get in the finals.
Yeah, it's funny. I want to go back to Dallas for a second. As you mentioned, the fact that Jason Tatum hasn't really come up big in big moments. I keep waiting for that moment where we can say, oh, that's the Jason Tatum game. That's where he took over, and I don't know that we've had that. But when you look at what Dallas has and the idea that, Kyrie having an off game leads to them losing last night, what Luka and Kyrie have been doing here, it feels almost like that was – we all remember when Kyrie got swooped up by Dallas, and we were kind of saying, how's this going to work? It's working, man. It's somehow Luka and Kyrie is working in Dallas, and Jason Kidd kind of orchestrating all of it. It's a pretty remarkable story.
Yeah, it's like alchemy, right? It's like magical recipe making. I don't know how Kyrie plus Jason Kidd, plus credit to Daniel Gafford and P.J. Washington, guys they got at the trade deadline, since those dudes got inserted, really since Kidd figured out his rotation and his starting lineup going back to early March. They have the best defense in the NBA, and you're right, Kyrie looks great. I had a GM once tell me about Jimmy Butler, right? And Jimmy Butler, I don't know Jimmy at all, so this isn't a personal shot, but he didn't get along with people in Chicago, and he didn't get along with people in Minnesota, and he rubbed some people the wrong way in Philly, and there was this perspective that he just wasn't agreeable as a teammate. And then for whatever reason in Miami, at least to date, it was perfect. It worked. And the GM told me sometimes there are just some guys who don't have many places where they fit, but if they find it, the best version of those guys as teammates, as players, maybe as leaders comes out. And I've been thinking about that, to your point, as I've watched Kyrie, because he looks happy. He's saying all the right things. I am certainly someone who has not been the leader of the Kyrie Irving fan club over the years for a lot of reasons, but credit where it's due, at least as a basketball player. He's been an absolute stud. Not last night, but generally an absolute stud, reliable late in games, fourth quarter hero, moves the ball. I think he helps Luka get into the offense a little more quickly, which is significant. I'm with you. At least for now, it is the Kyrie Irving, at least basketball redemption tour. And I guess that's one of the cool things about sports. Like, guys can play their way to different narratives and different legacies.
He's the host of Rider Than You, which you hear right here on the Fan Rochester, the Infinity Sports Network. You also catch him on the Beyond the Arc podcast. Bill Ryder, our guest. And Bill, a lot of Knick fans here, and it's funny thing about expectation was, well, I think the expectation kind of met. Like, right, you're not really upset. The team was on fumes. But now you had to an off-season, and this is interesting for the off-season because the Knicks have a track record of doing the wrong thing when it comes to, in June and July. What is your opinion on what the Knicks should do here coming up this off-season, Bill?
It's so funny. They do have a history of shooting themselves in the foot. For the first time in my lifetime, or certainly my professional lifetime, I am bullish on and optimistic about the Knicks. And Leon Rose, who obviously runs basketball operations, came from CAA as a power agent. That dude is like J.D. Salinger. He never speaks to anybody, but he's doing an amazing job. So I have a high confidence level because he's shown a track record that he's going to make the right moves. Now, they have to bring back OG Anunoby. I think 26-5 or 26-6 if you want to include the one game at the end of the postseason he limped into when he played. He was such a difference maker. But if they can do that, they've got like Hartenstein. I think it's a restricted free agent, so that'll be an interesting decision for that team. But I think they're constructed to win. And I think, and I'm not from New York, my mom is, but I'm not a Knicks homer. I've been critical over the years. I think that take out Julius Randle, if the rest of those Knicks who were largely healthy over the back half of the season are healthy, I think they beat the Pacers. And I personally think maybe they even beat the Celtics. So I think if you can keep the core together, Brunson obviously hurt his hand. He'll be healthy when the season rolls around. If you can keep some of those bodies out there, Bojan Bogdanovic is the guy that didn't play, Mitchell Robinson was hurt, I think you're in really good shape. And I think for me, keep OG, you keep him. I think the Knicks are in the top tier in the Eastern Conference next year.
Bill, the LeBron and Bronny NBA draft saga and everything that's going on leading up to the NBA draft, it has me fascinated in the NBA draft in a way that I don't think I've ever been. What's your take on all of this? How do you think this all plays out? Is LeBron playing puppet master here behind the scenes and kind of navigating and charting a course for his son and he to play together on the same team here at least next season?
Yeah, I think he really is. And my view of Bronny is complicated because, like everybody, I viewed him from a distance until recently, and from a distance, not good enough to play in the NBA. I've talked to I live in L.A., and there are multiple scouts and front office folks, high-level folks in some cases, who came through L.A. to scout Bronny, and then we would have drinks or dinner or coffee, and inevitably we would talk about Bronny, and every single one of them coming off scouted him said the same thing over the last 5 months. The dude's not good enough to play in the NBA right now. He's not good enough to be drafted. And then you go to the Combine, and that is the same general view of him, the basketball player. And yet I was around Bronny. I watched him on the court. I mean, I got to talk to him in the sense me and 50 of my closest friends in a scrum pushing each other, talk to a 19-year-old. And he's an impressive – I like him. And he's impressive, and he's got a great head on his shoulders. And I think the comp is really interesting. Gary Payton II has a famous dad, and he and Bronny were both a little shorter, about 6'2". They have similar wingspans, pretty good at 7 inches. They have pretty good verticals, 42.5, and I think 42, respectively. And they both had to work on their shot. The problem is GP2 got to not be drafted because he shouldn't have been, got to go to the G League, got to sort of be some anonymity to get to a level where he's an impact player. I don't think Bronny will have that opportunity, and you are right. But LeBron James is certainly pulling the strings. Bronny turning down 8 of 10 teams that want to work him out privately is not what you do when you're a marginal draft pick at best. He only wants to try out for the Suns and the Lakers. They are certainly through Rich Paul, LeBron's agent, / best friend, or one of his best friends, / Bronny's agent, trying to control where Bronny goes. So I'm rooting for the young man. I really liked him. I like LeBron, but I think there's a really good chance that the heavy hand that LeBron is placing upon his son's career, I know he's doing it because he loves his son, and I get that. I have a son. But you can love your kid and make mistakes. I'm kind of worried for Bronny that's what's happening.
Yeah, Bill Ryder, our guest here. A couple football questions before we let you go, Bill, here, because you're on the air here in Bill's country. And look, we have this promo about you saying the window is closed for the Buffalo Bills. It's over. I can almost recite it. I've heard it so many times. Bill, I mean, now there's been changes. Diggs is gone. So your opinion on the window here for the Buffalo Bills in 2024?
It's interesting, right? Because, like, in this business, you can be right on accident or be sort of – I mean, I do think their window is problematic, and they almost proved me – and I wish they had proven me wrong because not only are you playing the promo, I got some buddies who live out that way who were really sad when Buffalo lost that game to the Chiefs. And you guys, they played really well. It was a great game. I'm master of the obvious here. The Chiefs are a dominant force, and they're so hard to beat, and they've obviously not proven a couple times in this last run that they can go on the road and do what they've done in Arrowhead. Yeah, I think your window is extremely problematic. I don't know that I worry as much about Stephon Diggs leaving. I'm not a beat writer at all. I don't have the inside scoop. But people that we've had on the radio show or people that I've talked to privately have suggested that maybe Diggs had worn out his welcome there. There's obviously a cap reality. Their GM just said this. Like you got to fit people into the structure of the NFL and how it works. But I think the fact that Buffalo does not have the money that it used to because of the guys they have to keep and pay, Josh Allen included, in a time where you still have the Chiefs who are succeeding despite the fact that they don't have a premier receiver and eventually will draft one. I think the AFC is much more difficult 2 years from now than it was 2 years ago. I think it is going to be much more difficult than it was last year. I don't know how I feel about Aaron Rodgers, but you look at Rodgers and the Jets, that could be an additional challenge. I don't know about Deshaun Watson in Cleveland. That could be an additional challenge. I don't really believe in Russell Wilson, but between those three teams, one of them is going to be markedly better, and Pittsburgh is pretty good. All of which is to say, yes, I think the odds for Buffalo are very, very, very small. Now, I'll say this. My buddy Ty Dunn, who I love, wrote a story about that head coach, and it felt like the team rallied around that head coach, and that is right, they played really well after Ty, and Ty's amazing after that story came out. So maybe I've underestimated how much fight there is in that locker room. But, yes, I think the road is much more arduous than it was 2 or 3 years ago. And if I'm a Bills fan, I would have wanted to win earlier because I think the window is much more difficult now.
Now, Bill, humor me for a second because you and I, if I'm not mistaken, are both Bears guys. And
I am.
Am I allowed this offseason to feel like they're making the right moves, or is this just setting us up for more disappointment? What are your thoughts on what the pride of Canandaigua, New York, Ryan Poles, has done with the Chicago Bears this offseason?
Yes and yes. You're allowed to be optimistic, and it's going to break your heart. The other day, I did the stupid, go through the schedule thing, and I talked myself into a 10-7 window, and my producer, Tom, just looked at me with the glee that only a producer can have when he knows that you're going to be heartbroken. I mean, they should win, right? They have an amazing roster. They have 3 premier receivers. Bowles is awesome at what he does. I guess I'm agnostic on Caleb Williams. I just don't know. But you would think if he can even remotely succeed as a football player, he's going to succeed with this team, and it's the Bears. So they'll probably win 4 games, and we'll be crying by November. But I hope I'm wrong.
Beyond the Arc, tell us about the podcast for folks who are not familiar here, Bill.
Yeah, if you're looking for a little hoops content in your life, or even if you're not and you're feeling generous to the guy who disparaged your Buffalo Bills team, it's every single day daily NBA podcast with John Gonzalez, Ashley Nicole Moss. I really enjoy doing it. Podcast Forum, wherever you get podcasts. We're on CBS Sports Network 2 to 4 days a week, kind of depending when they throw us on there. 1 hour, talking hoops. I'll be nice. If enough of you subscribe and let me know in the comments, I'll reverse my Bills. I'll take the Bills this year. How's that?
Bill, you're the best, man. Thanks for making some time for us here.
Always. Thanks for having me.
Enjoy your day. There's Bill Ryder. Ryder Than You. You can hear him weekdays on The Fan starting at 10 a.m. right after Maggie and Perloff. And check out Beyond the Arc, the new podcast there. Little hoop podcast that Ryder's got going on.
Okay, and I got to think back here because he said something interesting about the Bills. And we remember Monday Night Football, 12 men on the field, not really good. Was the Ty Dunn piece? Did that really rally the team?
It was a galvanizing thing, yeah. It was. It really was because that was the peak of the outrage, right? It was the Denver game. My buddy that I had lunch with today, who's from Manhattan, he's a Broncos fan, and he mentioned that game. And just the thought of that game infuriates me. It was on McDermott. It was so clear that loss, that game, was on McDermott. Too many men on the field. It's the head coach. And the Ty Dunn piece came out, I want to say, that week.
That came right after, and it felt like that was perfectly timed to say, hey, here's the team losing a game because of the coach.
And there's more to this than you guys even know. Look at what this coach has done during his time here. And here's the story of
9/11,
which is the thing that everybody latches onto. But it was more than that, right? It was the rift between he and other coaches and he and other players, and it didn't paint a very flattering picture of Sean McDermott, a guy who's won a lot of football games for this organization.
Yeah, and that it came across that you were kicking a man when he was down.
It was a hit piece.
So, right. They called it on One Bill's Live an assassination piece.
Mm-hmm.
Now, it did have original reporting in there, so I can't be critical in that regard. But funny thing happened, Danger, because after that game, the Bills blow out the Jets. Okay, that's the Jets. They lose a game in Philadelphia that was just bonkers, okay? And part of that loss was a 58-yard field goal in the rain. But then you beat Kansas City, you beat Dallas, and then all of a sudden the ball starts to kind of roll in that regard. So, yeah, maybe Ty Dunn deserves an assist from last year.
And we know that Ty Dunn has his Western New York roots, right? I think he knows what he's doing. Like, hey, you think everything's good? You think you just coast? You think that you're going to be okay just going 6-6? The expectation is higher. We want more. We deserve more. We've been through enough. We don't need a coach who's just going to kind of like, not have the attention to detail. And Ty Dunn you're right. It was an investigative. I mean, he talked to enough. He sourced the hell out of that thing. For anyone who wants to say, it can't be true. No, he sourced it. He got it from play. I mean, he got opinions from former players, from former coaches, from former personnel. I mean, he talked to over 20 people for that piece. And it didn't paint a flattering picture of Sean McDermott.
And it actually felt, as we're heading to Thanksgiving, that felt like kind of the death knell of the Bills, did it not? You're 6-6. How could this team with Josh Allen and all this talent be at this point?
Well, the idea that there's an us versus them, right? The us versus them mentality can carry a team to a championship. We saw Philadelphia do it against the Patriots, right? Like that year that Philadelphia was like, nobody likes us, we don't care.
Right. They were a 1 seed that everybody thought would lose to Atlanta or lose to whoever. Minnesota, and they kept winning and winning and winning. So maybe that's something from McDermott, like if he needs to reach into his bag of tricks, but what would that be, us versus them? Like, you're not, like, local media, like, is like, who in the local media right now is so super critical? Like Jerry Sullivan,
he's gone.
He's gone.
Yeah, the Ty Dunn piece was that, right?
Yeah.
Like that was as critical as I think anybody has been of the Bills during the Bean McDermott era, and all they did was rattle off all those wins after the piece dropped. Kind of interesting. Yeah. And you also moved on from Ken Dorsey, and you could say what you want to say about how that all went on. I shared my conspiracy theories with my Broncos buddy at lunch today, and he was kind of like looking at me, and he's like, wow, yeah, all of that makes a lot of sense. Like what led to Diggs leaving here, the whole the way it is all kind of laid out.
Yeah.
The things that we can't talk about on the air.
Right. And for anybody, and I get this a lot, and you get this a lot, Diggs is me, he's me first, me that. There's multiple angles to the story, and none of us want to get sued here. Right. It will make for an interesting book someday.
I think that if you have hostility towards a player on the Bills, that Diggs probably isn't the player that you want to have that hostility towards. In fact, I would venture to guess that if there was a player on that roster that wanted to win more than anybody on that roster, his name was Stephon Diggs. That there might have been other players in prominent roles on that roster that maybe didn't have the discipline or the commitment to the team, to the result that Diggs had.
But to Matt Perino's point last hour, it doesn't help when family members who also play in the league are saying negative things online about your quarterback.
There's baggage and there's distraction, and all of the things that we knew were coming in with Diggs, for the most part, we didn't see it as bad as it was in Minnesota. I think the Bills did a better job of shielding the general public from that. And every interaction we had with him, I thought was fine. I thought he handled himself in the media as good as you could handle yourself if you have that baggage attached to you.
Yeah, and where he didn't kind of dump everything about Minnesota when he was out in Buffalo. If we're anybody holding out, we're going to learn a lot more when he talks down in Houston. No, I don't think at all we're going to learn anything.
I don't think so either. I think he's going to do his job. I think he's going to show up. I think he's going to work hard, and I think he's going to contribute. I think he's going to still be. I'm hoping they don't regret the move. I get the move, and I don't know that I necessarily believe. We talked to Matt Perino last hour about some of the comments that Brandon Beane made in his interview with The Athletic. I don't know that it's a convenient thing to be able to say, well, the cap. I mean, come on. We didn't want to. We wanted to take that pain now instead of have to worry about that pain later. that's an easy thing to say because every team has to deal with
While that's true.
It is true. You're
While
not
that
lying.
Is true.
Yes.
Is that the real reason?
Right. You're not lying, but to Perino's point earlier, like, hey, the relationship just kind of wore off. And I go back to that loss against the Bengals, the 2022 postseason, right?
Yeah. What led up to that and everything else?
I go back to that game, that loss, and I think that was the point. That was the point where Diggs probably had enough of Buffalo. Now, last season he showed up, he did everything, he said all the right things, and he went out there and look, he took himself out of the game probably more frequently than a lot of people wanted to. He didn't come down with the big catch when you needed him to against Kansas City. You can fault him for all of that, but for the most part, he did his job. He showed up, he said yes, did what was asked of him.
But I think it was divorce that is going to benefit both sides. It'll benefit Diggs in Houston, and for the Bills, did that really help Buffalo's offense last year? Like, you can't replace that production, but ultimately you didn't get to where you needed to.
I'm telling you, it's going to be fascinating. When you look at the East and you look at the skill position players of the two teams that we expect to contend against the Bills.
It's not comparable.
The Dolphins, the Jets. Their skill position players, the New York skill position players are friggin' elite. I mean, like Garrett Wilson, Mike Williams. You've got great receivers on the outside. Breece Hall quietly was one of the best backs in the NFL last year coming off of a torn ACL. He'll only be better this year. And then, of course, Miami has what Miami has. It'll be interesting to see if the Bills, with this patchwork group of skill position players, you still have James Cook, you still have Josh Allen. There's an arrogance that comes with having your franchise quarterback, and the Bills have that. I can't wait to see if this bunch of receivers that they've collected can compete with the receivers, the star power that you have in New York and in Miami.
Yeah, we got some takes. I know, like, you got coming off a long, and you and I had a long week.
I called it an extension to the holiday weekend. We had a holiday weekend plus.
It's like you and I fit in like a mini vacation over the weekend. Over the weekend, Bill Walton passed. I don't have a take on Walton. I just have a take, kind of, just an observation on how everybody is talking about it.
Okay. I have, it's kind of a non-sports take. It's something that I can't believe we're excited about when there's so much else out there that could be achieved. But this is where we're putting our minds. We'll get into that and more next with some takes on tap. I'll Drink to That is on the way. You can pull up a stool here at 866-4FAN, 585-866-4326.
Fan Rochester. Listen anytime on the free Odyssey app.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Bills OTAs continuing today. Of course, one of the battles we're all paying attention to, wide receiver, tight end Dalton Kincaid offering his opinion.
You know, just a lot of selfless guys. Obviously, that room looks a lot different from last year. And I feel like that transition has gone really well in terms of, you know, those guys blending in and meshing good with the group of guys we have here and the culture.
Charges against golfer Scotty Scheffler have been dropped. Game 4 tonight, Dallas and Edmonton. Stars are ahead in this series by an 8-2-1 margin. On the Major League scoreboard, Game 1 of a doubleheader sees the Tigers over the Pirates 8-0. Game 2, Pirates leading the Tigers now 3-1 as they go to the 4th. Dodgers with the early lead on the Mets 1-0. They're in the 2nd. Texas is up on Arizona 4-0. They're in the 8th. Cardinals over the Reds 5-3. Gene Battaglia, the Fan Rochester.
Straight up with no chaser. You're in the sports bar with Danger and Battaglia on the sports leader 95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan, Rochester.
We're in the sports bar, back from an extended long holiday weekend. Holiday weekend plus. We're going to add a plus to everything. But back with some takes, feeling good, feeling refreshed.
Yeah, I feel like it's a Bill Walton take, but I guarantee it's the one that you haven't heard from because he came to Rochester a few times, Danger, and I heard him once at the Compeer luncheon when they used to do that, and he was fantastic.
Yeah.
He that's what a motivational speaker should do. Should want to motivate you. Be a better man. Be a better person. Be a better neighbor. Be a better anything. Bill Walton, in his own style, kind of did that. Now, compare that to other speakers who didn't prepare. Jim Boeheim.
No, just showed up.
Just showed up. Yeah. And let me tell you stories here about Derek Coleman and scratch my head like, what are you doing here? You're wasting my time. Walton was the opposite. Fantastic. And my reaction when I heard the news on Sunday was like, Manny, wait a second. Bill Walton, I didn't even know he was sick. There's something admirable about going out that way. The cancer isn't going to change my life one bit. I'm going to go right to the end if it's going to take me. Chadwick Boseman, do you remember him? He's the actor.
Black Panther.
Yeah, he comes to mind same way. And look, on the other end here, you have others that will, make their fate a good cause. Craig Sager, Stuart Scott, heck, Jim Valvano. Jim Valvano leaves behind a massive legacy. We remember the speech. Heck, we remember the speech more than anything he did on the court. So my point, my take is here, really, there's no right or wrong about it. You just have grace either way.
Well, it's a reminder. What was Walton, 71? I mean, it's a reminder to me that life is a precious thing, that our time is our most valuable commodity. It's the most important thing that we have. We get very, very caught up as a society. I'm guilty of it. You're guilty of it. Everybody's guilty of it. Getting caught up in things that send you sideways or man, Bill Walton was an example of how to live, and that guy just exuded this optimism and happiness and carefree attitude, a loving kind of bigger than life personality. And if you've had that kind of trauma in your life, that sickness in your life, or you had something that can serve as a wake-up call, and I've had it recently, that has served as a wake-up call, like, look, we love what we do. It's a part of what we are. It's a part of our legacy, but it's not as important as the legacy that we're leaving behind with our family, our friends, our community, how we impact them. And life is just too short, and time is too precious to get caught up in trivial, small things. Bill Walton, I feel, was a great example of how to not just live, but live the fullest possible life you could live.
Who had the take? Forgive me, because I heard this. Was he actually a better broadcaster than basketball player?
As a basketball player, I feel like he was a little bit before my time, so I don't want to speak to that.
Like,
I know that
one of the best college players ever wins an NBA championship right out of the gate in Portland, and then all these injuries, and everybody, just ready to kind of throw dirt on him. It's like, hey, you're done, you're not anything. And then he has this second act with the Celtics in the 80s as a sixth man. He was fantastic.
Yeah, he's a wordsmith. I know that whenever he spoke, the words that he would use, and he was just very articulate, very positive, just felt like a very large, generous soul. And you hate hearing that guys like that are gone too soon. And I think 71 is way too soon. So maybe what he leaves behind is an example for us to follow, that we should, all of us should, look for opportunities to embrace life with a positive attitude, embrace life with a larger than life, bigger attitude that is centered around love more than anything. Because it feels like that guy was just over, his cup runneth over with love. You never heard him say anything bad about anybody ever.
No.
It was just amazing. So he will certainly be missed. Now, Gino, I'm not trying to contradict myself with what I just said. This is just an observation that I have made. And I'm not complaining, I'm not griping about this, but we live in amazing times. And if you stand back and you marvel at our technology, our science, our medicine, we also live in a world where we want more. It's not enough that we can now control our entire house using only our voice. Will we ever have the ability to time travel? Will we ever colonize Mars in our lifetime? Gino, not to worry, because now we don't have to bend over to put on our shoes. Did anyone ask for slip-in shoes? You know the kind I'm talking about, right? The kind that you just slide your foot. Skechers. Think about all the extra time you're saving by not having to bend over to tie your shoes. You can finally learn to play guitar with all the time that you've saved. Howie Long makes it look so easy. Tony Romo makes it look so easy. Shoe Tech is here to keep us satiated until we get our flying cars, Gino.
That's it. Well, flying cars like Wally. We're just sitting around drinking milkshakes, watching a monitor, and don't do anything. We all look like a bunch of blobs. We can't tie our own shoes.
Yeah, the movie Idiocracy came out some time ago. Remember that? Mike Judge, the Beavis and Butthead, directed that movie. And so much of what happened in that movie, there's a lot of things that have happened in that movie.
Did you do this take intentionally?
Why?
You have no idea the connection here.
Oh.
Okay, this is the segue of segues. Unintentional segue by Mike Danger. Because Bill Walton, in all of his speeches, tells the story of what it was like to play for John Wooden. And John Wooden, what was the first thing he taught? How to tie your shoes. And so Walton's and the rest of his fellow freshmen what on earth are you talking about? Tying my shoes? Well, you look at the John Wooden pyramid. Basically, his message was everything starts with the basics there. So what you did there, very impressive.
I didn't need that. Completely unintentional.
You should have owned that.
This is how I've gone through my entire life. Just completely stumbling forward. I had no idea. Oh, that's good. But there is something to that it starts with the fundamentals. It starts with and the little details matter, that there are no shortcuts. So if you're one of those people that are taking the shortcut
with tying your shoes, you're gonna.
I want you to serenade me when you learn how to play the viola with all that spare time that you've saved in not tying your shoes anymore. We get those flying cars, though. I was going to say, Wall-E is what's next, right? Idiocracy, we've kind of conquered. We watched that movie, and I was like, oh, yeah, Ow My Balls is basically all YouTube is. But when we get to live like Wall-E, that's when it's like, okay, yeah, this is a little too prophetic with some of these movies that we grew up on.
I'm going to give you the quote, Danger, and I know you know who is going to say this, and for everybody listening, you'll be able to figure this out. But this is just a quote that is it's pretty rich here. Plenty of takes here that can come out of it. Quote, figure out who said it. Quote, in hindsight, I wish I hadn't have gotten as deeply involved in it. I hold no grudge. I have no resentment over the guys who chose to go and play on Live. Everyone's got their own decisions to make, and everyone has the right to make those decisions.
Look at Rory.
Wow.
Look at Rory.
Backpedal.
Just absolutely reversing course. He's a changed man. I mean, you'd file for divorce from Irondequoit royalty, and all of a sudden you're a different person. It's like we don't even know you because we don't, scumbag. So now he's all good.
Why didn't you say that in the beginning? It's not for me. I have no grudge against anybody.
Right.
Oh.
honestly, that should have been the answer all along. Like, okay, yeah, I can't fault anybody. Can you fault Jon Rahm for making $750 million to leave the PGA Tour? Can anybody fault? I mean, you could say, well, it's Saudi money, that I'll listen to, but I mean, if you get a job offer and you take the better job, why would you be upset at that person?
There's conflict everywhere, right? Like in terms of where the money comes from. If you dig, this one just happens to be right out in front of your face here. And look, for anybody that loves a PGA Tour, this was as divisive a thing in the sport ever, right? The way this kind of came about and why, hey, pick and choose here. And again, it's kind of just a personal choice here. And what, all of a sudden Rory became wise over the last 2 years? Or maybe he's sick of taking it from every angle here. Like when his personal life gets kind of splattered, all right, let me at least make peace here with everybody else on the tour. Because you know what? Here's my theory on this. Who put out that he was going through a divorce? Was it his people? No. Was it? It was Liv.
Yeah.
It was absolutely Liv. You know what? You effer. Here you go. And it was a Liv account that actually put it on and forced people to report on this. Like, hey, here's Mr. High and Mighty here. By the way, he's running around with Manda.
So do you think Liv put Manda up to it as well? Like maybe a little post-interview session at the bar? I mean, that's we're getting pretty deep into it now. Has anything come from that? Has a statement been issued?
No.
Nothing.
You know why? Because if it's true, how do you worm your way out of it other than to duck and cover and a blow over?
The lawyers have to be involved if it's true. And I imagine it's true.
Where did the story come from?
I imagine
it came from Liv. You're going to go. The Saudis can take on your lawsuit.
I imagine that the Viacom lawyers, that the owners of CBS are looking over the contract there of Amanda and saying, how are we dealing with this? What's our statement going to be? What's our stance going to be? And just how much has she violated her term of agreement with us here before we can say, bye-bye, go live your life with Rory if that's what you want to do.
Oh, boy. We're going to find out real quick because it's the Canadian Open. The tee's off tomorrow. Actually, it's not that far. It's right over the border, I guess, if you wanted to go check it out. If you're going to go to the Canadian, do us a favor here in the sports bar. Boo that man.
Yeah.
Boo that traitor. He is not not a Rochester.
No, we do not claim him as ours. And we have nothing but the deepest sympathies for his future ex-wife and Poppy, their daughter. That's Irondequoit royalty. You don't do that to us. That was part of the extended weekend, too. Renewing the passport, Gino.
I thought you were going to say renewing the vows.
No. We had to renew the passport. Got to be able to get across the border with greater ease.
Oh, all right.
Getting across the border.
Where are you going?
You need the enhanced ID now, right? Like the one with the little star, which I don't have yet, and it was time to renew the passport anyways. Renewing the passport, still like the most antiquated. Do you know that to get a passport, you have to do a check or money order? You still have to mail in a check or money order. Do you remember the last time you physically wrote a check?
I'll do it once a month.
Once a month you write a check?
Yeah, I forget why I had to do it. I needed a repair on the house. That was basically. Yeah, so you still have a checkbook, but it's not frequent.
I don't have a checkbook. I have not. I couldn't tell you the last time I physically wrote out a check.
Well, that's because your wife handles all the money.
She's not writing checks either, pal. She's not writing checks. I can tell you that. She's
danger walks right
partially
into that
because she's cheap. But yeah, the paying for the money order to send with the passport application. That was I've completely forgot about money orders. I actually think that there is a novelty to the checkbook. Maybe instead of Venmo from time to time, you just whip out the checkbook, write your buddy a check.
Would that still work in Wegmans? Hold on, let me write this down.
Oh, you really want to fire somebody up? Yeah. Wait until they're done cashing you out, then whip out the checkbook.
How many stores still have the no personal checks allowed? No, you should. What are you kidding me? Of course, no.
I'm just saying between friends. It's very easy to Venmo somebody money if you're out to dinner or something like that. But what about whipping out the checkbook and just sliding over a little check just to class it up a little bit?
We had the one guy in our fantasy football league who still does that?
Pays by check.
Pays by check.
Here's my $50 dues. I'll scratch out a check. Like, what are you looking at? Like, I mean, the age that we live in now.
You just take a picture.
Yeah,
and
it's
put it in.
easy to deposit.
Matter.
It's not a big deal.
But a few years ago, maybe not. You had to go to the ATM and put it in.
There you go. Some takes on tap here.
Again, the wide array of topics here in the sports bar that we can kind of tackle. Like, let's review that last segment. We talked about the mortality and how to handle cancer with Bill Walton. Is there a right or a wrong way? And you can do it either way. We talked about Trader Rory, and we talked about personal checks. Is there anything else I missed there? Oh, and Skechers, of course.
Oh, yeah, slip-on shoes. Yeah. Shoe tech. Big shoe tech. Just controlling you, satiating you until we get to our flying cars. With all that being said, we have happy hour next in the sports bar. We have time for your calls. If you want to join us, that number is 866-4326. The NFLPA is gearing up for a proposal that could change what this time of year looks like for the NFL and its players.
But is this real? Well, like, where is this all kind of going?
And we also heard from Brandon Beane. Brandon Beane speaking to The Athletic and sharing a couple of interesting little nuggets of information. Lots to unpack from our conversation with Matt Perino covering the Bills for the Syracuse Post-Standard as well. We'll get to all of that next on The Fan.
You're listening.
HD2 Rochester and streaming online and in the Odyssey app at The Fan Rochester. The sports leader, 95.7 FM and AM 950. The Fan Rochester, an Odyssey sports station.
The Fan Rochester Sports Update.
Bills OTAs continuing in the sunshine here in Western New York today. One of the battles we're watching, of course, the wide receivers. The guy who's been here all along, Khalil Shakir, says he's going to do whatever it takes.
For me, it's just always been, if I got to go in there and block 50 times, go in there and block 50 times. If I got to go in there and run a route, run a go route and run off 50 times, I'm going to do it. I'm huge, and what goes around comes around.
No action tonight in the NBA. Game 4 of Dallas and Edmonton is tonight in Alberta. Stars are ahead 2-1. Chargers against golfer Scotty Scheffler. They have been dropped. Rochester Red Wings tonight continuing their series at home against St. Paul. On the Major League scoreboard, the Pirates leading in Game 2 over the Tigers 4-1. They lost Game 1 by an 8-0 score. Dodgers are up in the Mets 1-0 in the fourth. Phillies up in San Francisco 2-0 as they head to the fifth. Gene Battaglia, The Fan Rochester.
The Sports Bar with Danger and Battaglia.
The Bills are going through their OTAs. I feel like I'm participating in my own OTA here.
This off-season proposal by the union.
Scotty Scheffler.
Mike Danger.
This is a full-blown relapse. Before our very eyes, Gene Battaglia has become a misfit once again.
Gene Battaglia.
Where's Mr. Mouth Fates? Where's Mr. Mouth Catalana?
Let's go Mets. Go Braves.
Intervention! I'm calling for an intervention. Friends and family of Gene Battaglia, listen up. We can't have this. He was doing so well.
Angel Hernandez, you stink, and I don't like you! And the Wolves have done it. They have forced a Game 5.
Rest in peace, Bill Walton.
Ronnie James's college career is over. He is staying in the NBA draft.
I've done a better job.
Cheez-Its are indeed the worst.
Right on a shot, and he scores! The overtime winner here in Game 4, and this series is tied!
Kirby's Courtyard. What goes on in Kirby's Courtyard?
Remember Kirby's Courtyard?
95.7 FM and AM 950 The Fan Rochester.
It is happy hour, and we welcome you back into the Sports Bar. Danger and Battaglia back from the long, extended holiday weekend. And here for your calls at 866-4FAN, 866-4326. Thanks for listening at 95.7 FM, AM 950. The free-to-download Odyssey app, your smart device, when you ask it to play 95.7 The Fan. We've even got our video stream up. You can watch the Sports Bar on our YouTube channel. Like and subscribe there, and follow along on the stream on Twitch as well at twitch.tv/The Fan Rochester. Well-rested Mike Danger and Gene Battaglia as well. You made it to Philadelphia on time on Thursday night?
I did. I got in before 11. I did it
before
under
11,
5.
and there was somebody there at the front desk.
And it was.
Did you ask my question? If you're not here at the front desk after 11, who's manning the shop? Do you have security?
So, yeah, there were cameras everywhere, and it's one of these places that felt more like an apartment building than actually, which is no good because oh, great, I have a kitchen I don't need and all that other stuff I need. Everywhere you go when you were down there, though, Phillies this, Phillies that. That's okay when a team wins. That's exciting. Me, on the other hand, here's your Mets update today. Well, the closer that isn't the closer anymore. Diaz going on the injured list. Oh! And Pete Alonso got hit by a pitch right in the hand, leaving the game. So the idea that the Mets could trade Pete Alonso, maybe you're not going to be able to play this song anymore, Danger, because this has taken all the fun away. I am a defeated man, a defeated baseball fan. Are you happy?
Are
you happy?
This is a far cry from when we last spoke. When we thought you needed an intervention because you were talking a little smack. You were popping off a little bit before you exited for the long holiday weekend.
I was not doing it in positivity for the Mets. It was merely, looking at the Braves fan Fates bad mouthing his own team. And you told me that was wrong.
No, you can't do that.
Why?
Because you're a Mets fan. You have nothing to say. You can't pop off. The Braves are still probably a postseason team, I would imagine.
Well, then after that, and this
Acuna tears his ACL.
Right, yeah.
Right? I mean, that's just bad. It's bad karma. I don't know that I agree with Fates, but I mean, you're a fan of the team. You can be critical of your team.
See, that's where you and Catalana and everybody has it wrong, where you are this way. Oh, we suck. We suck. I'm kind of doing that with my team here, but I don't
It's not about saying your team sucks, or it's just being realistic. It's just looking at what you have. Like, we had Bill Ryder on with us from Ryder Than You here on the Fan last hour. He's a Bears fan, as am I. And he said exactly what I thought he was going to say when I asked him. Are we allowed, as Bears fans, to be excited knowing what they've done this offseason, knowing that we've got like what appears to be like a competent organization right now? And he said, yes, you're allowed, but yes, also be prepared for the disappointment because they might win 4 games all season long. And it's like, yeah, that realistically, that checks out. I'll hear that.
There's something else, and I'm going to bring this to air. Maybe I'm breaking, but Ryder sent us a note afterward, and he mentioned this on the air, and I had to bring this up because if you're listening, you not only know Ryder from the show, you might have heard you do have the promo.
It's good to be Ryder Than You.
Buffalo Bills fans, I love your community. I love the city of Buffalo. I was a lukewarm, like a believer-ish in your team. Your window is closed. It's over. It's over. They're not good enough. And as talented as Josh Allen is, and we talked about this all year long, he's going to throw the ball 40 times most games. There's not anywhere to turn.
Ryder Than You, 10 a.m. till noon weekdays. The Fan, Rochester.
Now, that's been running on the Fan. You've probably heard it dozens of times. You know, you listen to the station more than anybody does.
To the point where, like, yeah, that and the girls telling you to eyes forward and everything, like, that is right up there. But as a Bills fan, doesn't that like kind of piss you off just a little bit? And you got to understand the context when he said that. That was actually after the Cincinnati loss, but he hasn't changed his opinion.
And for what it's worth, I don't think it's worth changing your opinion. I think he's right. Then he was right then, and he's still right now.
So I want to know, okay, because he mentioned this, that he knows people in our area who have pointed out that exact promo. Who is that? Just send us a note there, because I love the fact that people are, reaching out to him directly.
But there is something about that I don't like. Oh, you're such a hero. You've got to tip them off. I just wanted to let you know that this is something that's happening.
Well, now he has to hear the promo. So I'm sure what's going to get pulled here. The promo is going to get pulled because it said, "Hey guys, that's a take from
right." But I also think he knows what they're using to promote his show, so he knows that the take about the Buffalo Bills was something that and people in the sports journalism community know that if you go after the Bills, you're going to get that secret sauce that everybody's looking for. You're going to get engagement.
Well, yeah, I mean, there's one guy that covers the Chiefs, went to Syracuse, but he figured that out, probably in this time in Syracuse. Like, wait a second, if I just bait Bills fans, they're going to come back. Get ready for the Nick Wright takes in September. Congratulations, you're the September champs. Like, it's all so predictable. Yep. And I honestly, there's something a little to what he was saying there, though. Like, about it's so much more difficult for the Buffalo Bills, like as compared to the year with 13 seconds, maybe even the year before that. You had better opportunities. Like, it's going to be any easier now? Absolutely not. For the obvious reason, okay, you're paying the quarterback more and there's less talent. The other reason being that there's other great quarterbacks in the AFC, and you have two teams in the division who are kind of creeping up on you. Yes, the Dolphins. Did you forget? We need Week 18 last year to sew up the division, and we can't ignore the Jets. So, to Ryder's point, he didn't go to say the window's shut, but it's more difficult.
Yeah, the one thing that you didn't mention more than anything, and Ryder brought it up as well, is Kansas City is an unstoppable force. I don't know who in the Cincinnati might be the team that has figured out how to punch Kansas City in the mouth and get away with it. But I have questions about Joe Burrow's health. I don't know how you're feeling about him going into this season, but a surgically repaired wrist feels like you need that to be tip-top if you're going to be throwing a football the way he does.
Yeah, and when you have one of your top skill players in Higgins and perhaps your best defensive lineman in Henderson, there's some bad juju surrounding who's getting paid on that team.
I agree. So, but the AFC is going to be tough, and I think a part of the reason why that you still hear that is because it still plays. It literally and figuratively still plays. That you could say the Super Bowl window for this team is closed, that it's not going to happen that Josh Allen can be spectacular, throw the ball 40 times, and it won't be enough because there's just not enough there.
Mm-hmm.
And we saw that through a good part of last season. We were wondering, my God, are they even a playoff team? What are these guys doing? There's so much talent, but they're not connecting. I hope we're all surprised and things aren't that much of a challenge this year, but let's be realistic. If you lose the games or almost lose some of the games that you lose last year, what's going to change this year? What's going to make you believe that this year is all of a sudden going to be better? This great infusion of talent at wide receiver that they've invested in, the pass rush that hasn't gotten better, that arguably has gotten worse.
The best thing I can offer you, Danger, is this. It is still their division. I like Miami's defense. Did that get better? No, it didn't. And Tua, did he get paid yet? No, he did not. The Jets are interesting. The Jets defense certainly gives Josh Allen. That is the one defense that, right up there. But are you trusting Aaron Rodgers in that offensive line? Not me. I think the Jets are the team that comes out hot and finishes cold. I think the Buffalo Bills is going to be another rocky up and down season. I think 10-7 still could win the division. And once you win the division, okay, here we are at the same point of the story here. Welcome to the divisional round. I mean, can you get over the hump?
Well, it was a lot of fun bringing that up to Bill Ryder and getting his reaction from it, and then having him ask us to listen to his podcast after he insulted a fan base. He said he's not of the Bills. He's a good sport, and we appreciate him stopping by. We also spent some time earlier with Matt Perino of the Syracuse Post-Standard. Brandon Beane speaking to The Athletic, and a couple of interesting nuggets from that conversation. One was Brandon Beane talking about his inexperience as a general manager drafting Josh Allen and not realizing that Josh Allen really didn't have anybody to kind of mentor him in the NFL.
You dumbass, I said to myself, drafting a rookie quarterback. I didn't have someone here with the right experience, veteran for Josh Delino. Early on, Josh kind of struggling a little bit, going through his thing, and I realized it, and it was stupid of me to not have done it, but I got Derek Anderson in here around week 5 or 6. But really, we put all our assets into Josh Allen. I got too cute.
This is another example of just how strong the Peterman Musk is. I mean, it infatuated Sean McDermott and also Brandon Beane. I think they went into that season thinking, you know what? And, there's more to it. We'll get to what right. Perino said, but that was the season that Nathan Peterman started week 1 against the Ravens. He was your QB1 for a cup of coffee.
He was the starting quarterback in a game where the Bills lost 47-3. 47-3.
Yeah.
The Buffalo Bills lost the first game that Josh Allen actually appeared in a regular season game. Allen coming in mop-up duty, and I will never forget just how angry Sean McDermott was the following Wednesday when word leaked out from the late Chris Mortensen that it was actually Josh Allen starting. Was that a McDermott decision, or was that Terry Pegula from high above? Like, what are we doing here with Nate Peterman?
And maybe that's part of this, this about face from Brandon Beane. It comes off as a little self-deprecating, like I didn't know what I was doing and I didn't have anybody there for him and I wish I could do it over differently. We brought in Derek Anderson as if that was going to help. But I do like what Perino said, and I remember this too, that they brought in A.J. McCarron as a free agent at quarterback as well, and that maybe you thought McCarron would be that kind of guy that could be the mentor. And McCarron was more interested in trying to actually be the team leader and be the starting quarterback when everybody knew, like, yeah, man, you got beat out by Nathan Peterman. Nathan Peterman had a better preseason than A.J. McCarron. So
I don't know. I mean, it's all about, I think the only reason you would want to do this is just, hey, be an extra filter for the offensive coordinator or the coach. Like, you're somebody, hey, focus on this. You don't need to focus on that. You need that wise veteran. And I think what New England is doing with Jacoby Brissett, that's actually kind of smart, where maybe somebody who could win you a game, but he's not going to rock the boat. With Washington, with Marcus Mariota, I think Mariota's shot personally. And if he gets on the field, that's really, really bad. It will be Jaden Daniels. But if you just put Marcus Mariota in the room, who by all accounts is a good teammate and a smart guy, that's also good. What's the support system like in Chicago? I'm not doing this to be mean or
you're
pick on
needling me.
No, but I'm asking honestly.
I think that when you do what you've done with a prospect like Caleb Williams, your hope is that he's Andrew Luck. I think you're going all in, right? Like your hope is that he's Trevor Lawrence. Your hope is, and Trevor Lawrence hasn't accomplished anything yet, but that's your hope, is that he comes into the league with a confidence and a level of maturity that maybe a guy like Josh Allen didn't quite have right away. He didn't have that mentor. I'm sorry, man. I fail to believe that Derek Anderson has a big part to do with Josh Allen's growth and development.
No, that's with all respect to Brandon Beane, that's revisionist history. Why was Derek Anderson signed? It's because Josh Allen actually got hurt in the Houston game.
Yeah.
And they needed a quarterback. That's really what it came down to, that you had Nathan Peterman and nobody else. A.J. McCarron was gone by that point. So, no, you didn't bring in Derek Anderson to be this backup mentor. You needed a quarterback, plain and simple. And for any of these teams, your Bears included, like Josh Allen at the beginning was horrible. Like, he got shut out by Green Bay. The game against the first one against the Chargers, we remember that for the player who quit at halftime, but Josh Allen wasn't very good that game either. Hey, he beat the Vikings on the road and had a spectacular play, but how much of that was actually Josh Allen? It wasn't until a win after Thanksgiving you're like, wait a second, maybe there's something here with Josh Allen. So that's why, danger for the Bears. I know you hope he's going to be Andrew Luck, but everybody's got to kind of manage this.
I think the element that we fail to mention here is that Josh Allen really ascended when they got him the weapon. When they got him Diggs, Josh Allen looked like a starting NFL quarterback. He didn't look scattershot. He looked like...
Well, to a point, that is absolutely true.
He made plays as a rookie that we saw, and we're like, whoa, if he can do that, that's spectacular.
They were the 5 seed. The Josh Allen without Diggs. Now, that was the game where they lost in Houston in overtime, and Allen's still making some weird plays in that game.
Yeah, he was all over the place.
Yeah, but still, that's not by accident. That wasn't because the Bills had this 1985 Bears defense or anything like that. It was, all right, the kid had something. It wasn't until, but we weren't saying championship Buffalo Bills team at that point. It was still New England's division. We really hadn't been accustomed to Kansas City at that point. It was New England's world. It's when Diggs showed up on the scene. Now that we're living in a post-Diggs world. And that was the other thing that Brandon Beane talked about today.
A player of his caliber, you weigh a lot of things on those situations. But, ultimately, we just talked about the cap. You make moves for, I don't need to go through all the reasons why we decided to go ahead and do that. I would say from a cap standpoint, we decided just to go ahead and eat it now, and we think we can compete and do what we need to do by eating it now, and then not walk into next year and go, all right, because if we didn't, if we tried to come up with some way and split it up too many different ways, then now it's just like that albatross. You're just hanging on your neck all year. You look at your cap and you're going, oh man, look at how much money we still have dead.
Okay, that is being a master. Did he say
not
anything
lying.
No, he's not lying, and he even acknowledges the objection, meaning there's other reasons. But I'm not going to talk about that, and he just plows ahead to the fact where you almost forget that, hey, wait a second, I accept that answer. That's just fine. No, it's I don't want to talk about the other reasons that we need to focus on.
The other reasons would paint the organization and Stephon Diggs in a bad light, so there's no reason to go down that road. So let's keep it simple and just make it what it is. This is a cap conversation. This is about us eating it this year because we feel like we can still compete. All of that is true, but I think if you could still have Stephon Diggs, if the relationship wasn't fractured, I think you would take Stephon Diggs on this roster.
Of course. Like, I honestly, when Diggs got traded and you were down in Florida, I was surprised. I'm not going to lie. I was surprised. I thought because of the cap and all everything, you were not a better offense with Diggs off the team.
You're eating it this year, not because you're looking ahead to next year. You're eating it this year because you didn't want that distracting you this year. You didn't want that in your locker room this year, that there was more harm than good if you said, you're under contract, we expect you to show up to OTAs, and we expect you to show up to minicamp, and we expect you to be the Stephon Diggs that we are paying all this money for. I get moving on saying, well, at this stage of his career, the production isn't equal to what we were going to pay him. Like, yeah, that all makes sense. And for what it's worth, I don't think Steph Diggs is like in love with the notion of being a Houston Texan. He wiped his contract clean. He's got a 1-year deal, and he's a free agent after this year. Like, he's going to try and get one more big contract before he retires.
That's why you won't hear anything about Steph Diggs, because what purpose does that serve? He wants the final payday that will come up after this year. And yeah, and that wouldn't surprise me if somebody from the Buffalo media goes down to Houston and tries to get the story. I don't think we're getting any
I don't know that you'll get the story. I think at some point maybe somebody there's so much that happens behind closed doors, and there's so much rumor and conjecture around how this ended up the way it ended up. I've got my theories. Gino, you have your theories. I know there are a lot of Bills fans that hear a lot of rumors about what happened. At the end of the 2022 season, the last time we saw that one time when we saw Diggs just pacing up and down the sideline, and the Bills lose to the Bengals, and it was an ugly, ugly loss. The way that all ended, that led into the mandatory minicamp dismissal of Diggs, and McDermott getting caught up in a lie with the media, clumsily handling that. I mean, so much of that. I mean, that was really, at that point, we probably should have known, this isn't going well. There's definitely a fracture in the relationship, at minimum, between head coach and player, because you have the head coach saying one thing in a press conference and the player sending out an update seconds later saying, I'm here. Y'all sent me home. Like, calling out your coach for blatantly lying about what's going on. So, regardless, he's gone. And, you're hearing all that you're hearing from OTAs, from guys like Shakir, saying all the right things, which you want to hear, from Dalton Kincaid, saying all the right things, which you want to hear. It's just a hard thing to, I guess Bean is a bit of a politician here in saying what he said about the cap and not really going too in depth as to, in my opinion, the real reasons why you moved on from Stephon.
Yeah, it'll make for an interesting book someday. I think you and I can agree. And then why don't you guys tell us? Why? Because I don't want to get sued, and you don't want to get sued either.
No, I mean, I have my theories. I shared my theory with my my buddy who's a Broncos fan, and he had never heard some of the rumors that are swirling around this team around that time, around that specific game. And if you're a Bills fan, you know what I'm talking about. And when he heard them, his eyes got wide, and then I explained why Diggs might have been upset at the conclusion of that season. And that checks out as well. And then you could see a very easy pathway to where they were then versus how they were at the start of mandatory minicamp before last season, and what that conversation might have been like that led to Diggs being sent home to go cool off, their words, right?
You danger. I've covered every Bills home game for the better part of 23 years, and I've never seen anything like Diggs in the tunnel. Players are professional. Wins happen, losses happen, seasons end. Not everybody can hoist the trophy. I've never seen a player that angry in front of the media in full force, like having to go back in and talk to the coach. And that's the crux of it. Why was Steph Diggs so enraged? You see what you saw on the camera, but you've heard that from all the reporters. And I'm telling you, like in the tunnel, that's the story. What set him off in the tunnel following the Cincinnati loss?
Yeah. Well, I feel like we've pinpointed like when it went bad. And last season, for half of a season, you had Stephon Diggs producing, at an unbelievable rate, and then it just fell off a cliff. And none of that feels like it was like a coincidence. It just doesn't feel like a coincidence to me. So we'll keep tabs on what his season looks like down there in Houston now. But Brandon Beane kind of offering up every excuse, every reason, except for probably the real reason why they decided to trade Stephon Diggs. There is another little bit of NFL news that we haven't had a chance to talk about yet here during Happy Hour, And that's the NFLPA's proposal to change what this portion of the calendar looks like for the NFL, the off-season program, essentially eliminating the off-season program and maybe expanding the training camp portion of the offseason. Steve Tasker earlier on One Bills Live.
So you're talking about like a 12 to 15% rise
in a short period of
product.
In a short period of time.
You're talking hundreds of millions of bucks all told over the course of a very short period of time that is being added to your bottom line.
Yeah, that's huge.
So I think this is an absolute done deal.
I think it's a home run for both sides.
Okay, so to back it up a little, and I think we all kind of agree, as Tasker does, that it's a when question, not an if question. When the NFL goes to 18 regular season games and pairs off a preseason game, football fans will love it. And when you're going with more regular season games, well, then you can sell it to all the different networks and whatnot. But am I to believe that in exchange for this, the NFLPA is just asking for spring off? And to move the time into training camp? Why? These are easy practices. You go home at night, and they're voluntary. It doesn't sound voluntary when you're at training camp. There's nothing voluntary about training camp. So some of this just doesn't add up in my mind.
Right. It might be the coaches pushing back a little bit because they value this time of year very much. And if you're going to add another week, you better make sure that we have enough preparation going into it, so let's make training camp longer. I mean, ultimately, this is always going to be with the NFL about an opportunity to make more money. If it's there, they will take it, and maybe this is the first volley in that step towards getting to an 18th game.
Yeah, I mean, if I'm the players, like this feels like, okay, I'm in a negotiation. Hey, you know what? I'd like to accept the job, but I'd like X as salary. Well, we can't do that, but we're going to give you a parking spot and a couple extra flex days. Yeah. And you know what? We got a little bit of trade in the drawer. No. That should be with. I'm the NFLPA.
Is trade in the drawer too inside? That might be too inside radio. Do other companies have trade in the drawer?
I don't think trade in the drawer. That just came out of my mouth.
That's fine. I'm sorry.
What, like, if we have a gift certificate, we call it in our business trade.
Yeah. Sorry, you were riffing.
No, but the point being that the NFLPA, who reported this? The NFLPA? No, it was NFL Network's Tom Pelissero. Who does he work with? The NFL. That would be the owners. I am not buying any of this. By the way, I'm not the only one. There's a lot of pushback from the players on this.
And coaches. Coaches aren't really high on this idea either. Like, look, if you're Sean McDermott, you have your routine, you have your structure, you have your regiment. You know what day you're going to go to Pittsford Dairy when you're at training camp, right? You can't now throw all of that out the window and say, all right, well, we're going to, the offseason program is done. Now you've got to reformulate your entire plan for the training camp and cram everything into an extra 2 weeks. However they do it, it's going to be uncomfortable for head coaches. So they're pushing back as well. And a lot of the players, there aren't many of them, at least right now, that sound like they're too supportive or behind this idea of revamping the off-season program.
No, and if anything, what did the pandemic tell us? How many preseason games were there? How many actual...
They can do what they want.
They can do what they want.
They can do what they want. They've shown it before. Well, we can play on Christmas on a Wednesday? Yeah, on a Wednesday. We're going to play on a Wednesday, on a holiday. With limited, yes, they can do whatever they want. They are the NFL.
Well, they can do it from that standpoint, but the NFLPA, in order to get to the 18 regular season games, this is not going to move the needle. This is just moving chairs around on a deck, okay? Like the idea that, hey, it's funny how this kind of comes out right now. Hey, players, you really don't like practicing in the month of May? What if we did away with all that? Yeah, sign up for 18 games right now.
It's something that the owners can do for free that will eventually get them more money. And that's basically what this is. And the NFLPA is doing the bidding of it feels like doing the bidding of the owners, which is fantastic.
I know. And am I allowed to change opinion here? I'm acknowledging I had to take, 17 games. No, record book, blah, blah, blah. It was kind of a baseball writer take here. No, I think we all want an 18
Without
game,
change, there is no progress. and they're going to continue to kind of progress forward. They're going to want, if there's money to be made, they will make it. And 18 is short-sighted. I mean, they're going to get this thing to 20 in our lifetime. There'll be 20 regular season games in our lifetime. I believe that. And pay-per-view, yes.
I think 18, but with one of them, everybody goes overseas for one game. Like, this is only the beginning.
Mm-hmm. For sure. So it might not feel like a massive earth-shifting story right now, but it is a volley. It's not a nothing. It is something that's being put out there in an effort to create something larger for the NFL. We got to get to a round of shots next in the sports bar.
Yeah, as we talked about this with Bill Ryder, the idea that LeBron is kind of orchestrating everything with his son Bronny, but the idea that Bronny is only working out for two teams pre-draft, we'll tell you that. Bummer for Red Wings fans if you're heading out to the ballpark tonight, who you will not see. We'll set you up for the night here in the NHL and what's coming up tomorrow night in the NBA as well. Owen, I don't know if it's a favorite. How would you describe this? One of our sports bar targets, favorites? Somebody retiring over the weekend if you missed it.
We'll get into that and more next. A round of shots. And don't forget about last call. You can pull up a stool at 866-4326. 866-4FAN.
You're listening to the Sports Bar